Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on EntrepreNERDS CodeTeachers podcast. Today, I'm so excited to have with me Anjali Leon, personal and organizational agility coach and consultant, speaker, and community leader. Today, we're going to talk about lessons Anjali has learned from her improv experience and how this has helped her as a thought leader. Hi, Anjali. Welcome. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I think you're such an inspiration.
Thank you, Ashley, and thank you so much for having me on this podcast. So just taking you back a few years, I actually grew up in India and spent the early 20 years of my life there, and before my family immigrated to the United States. And early on, I was very interested in technology, particularly mathematics. I loved patterns and I loved solving puzzles. And that took me down the path of engineering. And my early years, my early career was in software development. But a few years down the line, I actually realized that the patterns and puzzles that I liked to solve didn't just focus on mathematics and technology. I was starting to get more and more interested in people and process and organizations. And that kind of led me down the Agile path. And we implemented Agile ways of working in the company that I worked at. And I really fell in love with it because of what it made possible for people. That people were able to really tap into who they are, their potential, and it kind of got a little bit addicting for me. And I wanted to focus completely on that. And so I kind of directed my career more towards people and process, and became an Agile coach. And I've been doing that for the last several years, the last 5 as an independent, charting my own path, improvising my own career, if you will.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. And I especially find it so interesting that, you went from a very analytical realm to a more maybe emotional and psychological realm, moving from facts and figures to people. And it's interesting how that blends together.
Yeah.
I would love to talk to you more about that as well. But today we are going to talk about improv, and there probably isn't much more beneficial to our lives than having a laugh and being able to enjoy our moments. So I'm curious, how did you find out about this? What led you into this?
So it was actually, I'd heard about improv only in the context of comedy and watching improv comedy. And it always was such an intimidating thing for me. For me, like actually being able to speak off the cuff, though I'm in front of classrooms all the time, in front of people all the time, and engaged in speaking in front of a large audience. But to tell you the truth, when it comes to speaking off the cuff and promptu, it used to make me really, really nervous. And in fact, almost caused me to be a little anxious. And so the idea of improv was completely intimidating to me. And I think like 5 years ago, I was at an Agile conference, and one of the keynotes was by an improviser who had brought improv to Agile and kind of made the connection between a lot of improv principles and Agile principles. And I was so fascinated by that, but still very intimidated. And in fact, actually, I had an opportunity to have dinner with her. And through that conversation, I was telling her how it felt daunting to me. And she said, "What do you think you're doing right now? You're just having a conversation. And you hadn't planned this. You're improvising. We're all improvisers." Anyway, that stuck with me, but it was still intimidating. Over the last maybe couple of years, I've really been working on leaning into things that are fearful to me, things that intimidate me, like getting past an edge. And so last year, it was about doing videos and capturing a video of myself and putting it online. That was very daunting. I did it, and once you do it, it's not that intimidating anymore. So this year, my goal was to be able to do more impromptu conversations, just like we're having right now. That I would have, before December of 2019, probably said no to this invitation to have this podcast because it would have scared me. So I thought, okay, improv is one way for me to be able to try to get past it. Oh, by the way, through my coaching last year, through my coach training last year, what I realized is I spend so much time in my head, and that's what actually stops me from doing stuff. And if I was moving, it in fact allowed me to tap into a different intelligence in my body and get past the things that were blocking me. And I know with improv, there's a lot of movement involved. It's like, okay, this might be a way for me to be able to tap into something else within me to get past this thing in my head that was blocking me. And so I found an improv class and I signed up for it.
That's so cool. That's very interesting. And I'll tell you, I mean, I'm in. I want to try this. Would you mind if some come to mind? Can you think of a couple tips that might be beneficial that we could apply right away until we get to our improv class? Does anything stand out as something that you've learned that you apply?
Yeah. So one of the things is just to have fun together, to be able to find things to laugh about. And it doesn't have to be profound. It doesn't have to be, something that makes others impressed. It is just about having fun. So I might say a word, and then you might say something that comes up for you based on that word. And if we were several of us, the next person would say something that came up for them based on what you said. And we just go around the room, kind of building on something and just having fun together. So it kind of helps us, and we have to do it, to a, say we have to do it to a beat. So you can't stop to think. Whatever comes up, you just blurt it out. So that's one activity that actually helps you get out of your mind and your process of judging yourself before you share something, and it just kind of builds that practice in you. So that's one activity that I thought was useful for me to just get out of my own head.
I love that. That sounds really fun. I'd actually like to try that. One of the things I've heard too, from my very limited exposure to improv, other than going to them, I love watching SAC Comedy Theater in Orlando, for example. And I'd love to hear about some tips that you know that people can look into either online or even locally in our South Florida area. But I also wanted to ask you, I've heard something about you're not supposed to say no or something along those lines. Is that a tip that you have learned, like a funny way to keep the conversation going without a stopper, like a word no? Did you learn that or something like that?
Yeah, so there's this concept of yes and in fact we bring that concept of yes and into Agile coaching as well. So if you want to be a better collaborator, the thing to do is to be able to help build on the other person's idea. So, many times if somebody presents something and you say, oh, that's great, but it really brings them down. It stops that idea from blossoming. But if you're able to find something that's valuable in that idea and then build on it, now it has a place to grow and have some potential. And it encourages the other person about what of the idea was great. So in terms of just developing a collaborative relationship, a yes and approach helps you actually get to someplace better as opposed to blocking things. So that total, from that element of improv, I felt was completely something that we could bring into any kind of team setting and practice. So in an improv scene, one of the big things is about keeping the scene going for a while. And so you have to actually support your partner in being able to keep the scene alive. So you want to be to set up your partner so that they can continue the scene. And so go with whatever your partner comes up with, and it'll help kind of build the scene and continue the scene.
I actually love this approach because I can think about times, even when you're, let's say, planning out an idea and you're road mapping strategies of something you're going to build, and you're kind of going around the room, you're in this kind of divergent thinking mode where you're just kind of throwing everything on the wall. And then you encounter someone that now, I'm not saying it's not good to be pragmatic, of course, but when you encounter someone that just kind of kills the vibe, like you're like, oh, it's never going to work. It can kind of shut down the creativity. So I think this is such an interesting concept. Instead of, you really have to be open, and you have to work to build on what they're saying. And I love this concept. I think it's such a positive approach to even building an idea, like how are we going to make this mobile app, let's say.
Absolutely, absolutely. This other concept that I've learned and I teach, which is you can always find something that you like about an idea. So even since so if you can stop to think about what is 10% of that idea that I like, and you share that with the other person. Now you have built up that other person, and then you can add to it, or you can add another idea, but you haven't discounted that person's idea. It also helps us to kind of pause and be a little bit curious. If I were to find 10% that was good about this idea, what would that be? So you're practicing a little bit of curiosity there as well.
That's wonderful. And it's such a good point, because they say curiosity, not only is it the thing that keeps us young, it's also, I think, the standout trait among some of our most successful entrepreneurs that we know of. They were curious. They were maybe willing to try something a little different. So what was it like when you signed up? So you looked around, you found a class, and then what'd you do? What was your first day like?
So, I was eager to start, but I realized that I probably was very, very nervous. And it took me at least, I think maybe till the third session to get out of my head. But I joined this improv group called Improv U, and the coach of Improv U was such an effective coach, because he helped me see that I could be an improviser in my analytical way. So even though I've become a coach, my tendency to analysis that comes from my early technical days has not yet, I've not yet eliminated that. I think it actually makes me who I am.
Yeah.
So what I realized is that I was still applying that same style in improv. So I would, there were times where we had to jump into a scene. So we stop the scene that's happening, we pause the scene that's happening right now, and we jump in and we continue. So you're supposed to do that, in fact, when the scene is either at a high point, where you're like, there's a laughter that has happened from the audience, and so now you're able to take it in a different direction, or if the improv scene is actually tanking, you kind of save your castmates from it going any further. So you pause the scene and you jump in and you take over. Well, I used to wait for those opportunities where it would make sense for me to jump in, because I had something new to add or take the scene further. But the idea is to just jump in and go with the flow. So you jump into the scene first, and then whatever comes up, you continue with that. Well, it took me a while to get to that. But he helped us see that improvisers come in three different styles. You have the robots, the pirates, and the ninjas. And so the robots are much more analytical like that. They try to make connections, see patterns in the scene, and give some structure to the scene. The pirates just jump in and do whatever, and then the ninjas know how to be a pirate and how to be a robot, and can really do both depending on what the scene demands. And so now you have structure and you have real creativity in the scene as well. So then my goal became to be a ninja, to go from a robot to be a ninja. But it also helped me see, as a robot, I still brought value to the scene. And in fact, I brought value to the scene, to the entire scene, because I helped bring some coherence to the scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make sense of it.
Yes. Yes.
You know what's so amazing is, having this team member who is willing to not only drive things forward but also save the scene, like you said, if things are starting to go awry, knowing when to dive in and or jump in and move things to a more productive topic, I think is such a valuable skill. And I'll tell you, even today, I haven't gotten to take these classes yet, but I've already learned some tips. You just talked a little bit about being a ninja, and I think I would almost, I hope you don't cringe at this, but you know how a lot of talk goes on about unicorns, and how, if you have this ability to design and code, or code and be an entrepreneur, they consider you kind of this unicorn, this mythical creature. Well, I think what you're describing is very similar to that. It's this skill to not only make sense of something, but also create something that never existed in the first place. So it's really fun. I cannot wait to try this. Actually, I'm so inspired by you. And I was wondering if you could tell us, maybe point us in a direction. How do we get started? What do you recommend?
So go look up for improv class in your area. I did, you can, there's drop-in classes, but I would actually recommend you join a series of classes that are designed for people who are just starting out, that help you really with some core drills and practices to help you build up that improv muscle. And then you get to just play with other improvisers and create a scene together, which is incredible fun. Yeah, I wish that every team actually started with a series of improv classes for their team. I think it would enable collaboration and boost collaboration greatly if they started out with improv.
Well, I see a series in your future because I think this is something. I love this. And I think, I'm excited. I'm actually going to sign up today. You've inspired me. But I wanted to know, whether it's on this topic or something else, if there's something that you'd like everyone that's listening to know. And it can be anything, something that you want to pass along, a thought that you use every day, something related to improv, whatever you feel.
I'd say don't let anything that you're afraid of stop you. Just lean into it. Once you do it once, that's in your past now, and you can then tackle another thing that scares you. The only way to get past a fear or anxiety is to lean into it. That's at least been my learning, and that's something that I would like to share with anybody who wants to get over an edge.
That is incredible, and I'm so excited. I can't thank you enough for joining me today. I learned so much from you, and I'll tell you, I mean, I love the classes that you teach. I think you're so inspiring, and thank you for being an example of women in leadership and women in technology. And I definitely would love to speak with you again. I think you're so interesting, and I just want to let the audience know that you offer coaching, training, workshops, lots of really great classes. So please check her out. And I just want to thank you for joining us today, and say to the audience, thank you. Go out and create something today and sign up for improv. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you for having me.
Thank you too.